Very good afternoon to all the participants of this webinar and especially to our young legal aspirants. I welcome you all to a session which shall probably answer all your enthusiastic questions on how to transform your wonderful journey from campus to the legal world. To share her enriching journey, we have a very special guest amongst us today, Ms. Manjaree Chowdhary, Executive Director and General Counsel, Maruti Suzuki, India. A master's in law from the University of London, Ms. Manjaree made a mid-career shift from academics to law. She began her legal career at a leading Indian law firm, moving in-house to General Electric before joining Maruti Suzuki. A successful professional with 30 years of experience, she has performed different roles in General Electric with increasing responsibility and complexity. Her body of work is well-rounded, spanning across diverse businesses, domestic and international regimes, covering a rich spectrum of legal, regulatory, and compliance practice. She has successfully leveraged her functional and business understanding to lead industry initiatives and support government relations work, notable among them being a formulation of a voluntary code of ethics adopted by NatHealth, a National Healthcare Federation of India. As the first women general counsel of Maruti Suzuki, she has successfully led change management through incremental steps leading to collective positive outcomes in a complex environment. Ms. Manjaree has been recognized by the Indian Corporate Counsel Association in its first edition of Trailblazers, India's finest in-house counsels in 2016, has featured in India Top 100 Powerful Women in Law in 2017, awarded the Outstanding Women Leadership Achievement Award at CXO and General Counsel's Leadership Summit and Excellence Awards in February 2018, also recognized as one of the 25 general counsels for their contribution to the Indian corporate legal sector and felicitated at the Indo-UK Law Society Summit at the House of Lords in London in 2018. She has been felicitated by Legal Era as a top woman in law in 2019 and as the General Counsel of the Year Female in 2020. Most recently, in 2021, she was honored as the PW Legal World's Top 100 General Counsel Club of Achievers for Excellence in Law. Now, without taking any further time, I would request our guest to take over. We heartily welcome her to Asian Education Group and Asian Law College, and I request you, ma'am, to share your enriching journey with our students.
Thank you, Garima, for a very kind introduction indeed. Thanks so much. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon with a group of young students who are lawyers and who are aspiring to get into the profession of law. And I think there is, I simply enjoy these sessions because I just feel that it was a time that I was in their seat, and it's quite a journey, you know, and there are just so many challenges and so many different things that you need to be mindful of. Or sometimes when I was going through them, I would always think they never taught me this in law school, you know, I wish they had, and perhaps it would have, you know, sort of smoothened over the passage to you know, achieving a little bit of success or a little bit of professional acumen as you go forward. So when I was approached to talk to the students here, I said, look, you have such a wonderful set of faculty, and who's going to teach them all the law they want to know? And the rest they will know when they get out of the college, and then they really have to practice it to know what it really is. So 1 hour, I don't think I can give them a full-fledged understanding on any topic in law for that matter, really. So I wouldn't be doing them justice, which I'm sure the professors are and the faculty is far more capable than I am to be able to do that. But what I can do for them in this 1 hour is to speak through my experience, to put myself into their shoes and think, you know, as they are in their final years, or, you know, just about a year or so left to go to get out into the world and, you know, make a living for themselves as lawyers. What is it that they would really want to know? What is it that would come in handy? And what is it that the outside world is like and is likely to offer to them, both in terms of opportunities and both in terms of challenges? And therefore, can I arm them with some sense of, a bit of some information that makes them a little more well aware, or a little more aware of what to do and how to do and what not to do. Suppose that can come in handy. See, everything one says today, I don't think they are going to remember it, or they are going to even, but when you are faced with that challenge, sometimes these things come back to you. And that is the intent of this section today. I know the participants have really brought out a whole set of agenda of questions, which are very interesting, and I would love to answer all of them as quickly as I can. So without too much of laboring too much onto the introduction side, I think I'll just start by saying that law was never my first profession. I'm English honors and a student with MA Masters in English Literature, and was a professor teaching English literature at Punjab University, Chandigarh, with all the intent of doing a PhD in the US and taking academics as a full-fledged career. And it is sometimes, that's what I want to say, you can never rule out the role played by fate. And me being an English student, English literature student, I used to read Thomas Hardy, which was one of the Victorian novelists. And if you read his novels, it's the fate always walks 2 paces ahead of you. So you can do much, but sometimes it's not under your control. And it was very by luck, by chance. It was to please a few senior counsels who happened to be friends of the family, who thought I should do law. And to get them off my back, literally, I went and joined classes where I used to teach there in the morning. They used to hold the English classes there. And then later in the evening, they used to hold the legal full-fledged evening course for law students. So I started doing that, and then finished 3 years. And it was, I was going through some personal difficult circumstances when I decided that I should take a sabbatical and get out of the bothersome kind of environment that I was in at that time. And I applied. I got admitted to all colleges in the UK and got 2 scholarships to choose from, which was very lucky indeed, I must say, because I don't think without the scholarship I could have made my way to the UK. It was a pretty expensive program. And I went on Felix, which is the elder sister of the Rhodes, since I was a little, over the age group of Rhodes, and went to do my master's. And it was on leave without pay from my department. So I still had a lien to come back to and join my work back. So when I went there, it was with a free mind. I think that was those nearly 2 years of being there was one of the best periods of my life. And I completely enjoyed myself. I mean, I partied really hard and I studied even harder. So it was great fun, made some great friends, traveled, saw the world. What it did for me was it broadened my horizons. I think I look back at that time and I always feel that I was able to see the world from a different lens altogether, and also realize that there is no limit to opportunity. And there's a big wide world out there. You can do whatever you please, and you can really do well at it. And that only happens when you see the world. And the academic world in London is really, really wonderful, because you have an amalgam of students coming from different parts of the country, world, and you really have the cream and the best. And and I happened to be studying at LSE, which was a great institution, and it was a wonderful experience. I had some of the most fantastic professors who really appreciated. One, they we bonded on a different level, because I was teaching earlier and I went to read and they were professors. So there was when the student teacher relationship ended outside of class, I thought we exchanged some different notes. It was great to see how they taught, their method of teaching, etc. I landed up doing rather well, to my great surprise. I was one of the 5 distinctions in an intercollegiate program, which comprised of 1,725 students that year. And there was a question that was asked, perhaps I should answer that later, but I do feel that I had that great testimonial that my professor gave me, which I should have used at that time to get myself a great job in one of the law firms there. All my batchmates thought I was quite crazy because while they were all applying for jobs, I wasn't. And they would say, why are you not applying? I said, I have a job to go back to home. I mean, I'm just on leave. I'm just doing LLM for the heck of it, right? And there were no, they thought I was crazy. Then I would give them excuses that I don't know how to use a computer. I really didn't at that time. So the computers came a generation later than I was. And I actually wrote my thesis, which is today a reference book by hand. And I went and took it to someone who typed it for me for 60 pounds those days. And you can imagine how much of money that is for a student. Now, when I look at it, I wonder, I said, what a foolish thing to do, but such was life then. And so I said, I don't have a computer. How am I going to make a CV? So somebody brought a laptop and said, we'll make it for you, etc. But I didn't do anything about it. If there's one regret I have in life, perhaps that's the one. I could have got a job in a Magic Circle law firm, and I could have done both the things. I could have been a solicitor as well as a teacher in University of London. And my professor there was very influential man, and he thought my credentials were great. I could have done a PhD, and I could have done both the things. And we still happen to be good friends. He's a professor, emeritus now there. But such was life. And I took a plane home when my visa expired. And when I was sitting in the plane, I realized, and this is true, I'm not making anything of this up. I felt when I was just flying off from Heathrow, and I said, oh dear, what have I done? I should have stayed back to do to take up a job here. The moment I landed back, I started communicating with my professor and saying, I want to be back. And he says, what's wrong with you? We were ready to extend your scholarship to do a PhD. And, what is this? So I said, no, I don't care. I'm giving up my job. I'm going to be a lawyer. I just don't want to do this anymore. I actually went and I resigned. It was a government job. And we are talking of mid-90s when government jobs were the thing. The corporate world came much after that. And they thought, my head of department, she thought I'd gone crazy. So she wrote to my parents and said that, you need to knock some sense into her. This is crazy. She shouldn't be doing this. And it's a permanent job. People get the right arm to be in and etc. So, but Lloyd, I just resigned. I had no job. I was 31 and I had no job. And I decided to be a lawyer. And I did litigation for a year when my parents were still posted in Chandigarh. And then they retired. I joined Arun Jaitley, and he wasn't able to hold more than 2 apprentices that year. So he got me fixed with Mukul Rohde, and I worked with him for good 6 to 8 months, And I'm pleased to tell you, somebody of you have seen the LinkedIn that's showing up. BW World, I'm a part of the jury of that for 40 under 40. And I happen to be one of my co-jurists is Saurabh Kripal, who was with me in the same chambers of Mukul Rohde when we started. And it's wonderful to see that the world has come a full circle nearly 30 years later, and we would be back in the jury now. So, but I decided that, if I had to be a litigating counsel, I was 7 years behind my peers. I had a lot of catching up to do. Suddenly, when you walk into a world where you've joined them laterally at a 7 years gap, you have a lot to, contend with, and you're behind, and suddenly begins to hit you that you may be academically better than them, but, you are still behind them in terms of experience. So you had a catching up to do, and litigation takes a long time for you to establish yourself. You really need time on your side when you're litigating. And with Saurabh Kripal, and with Mukul Rohde, Saurabh Kripal being the son of a judge, a Supreme Court judge, I didn't stand too much of a chance of getting too much of leverage out of that at that point in time. But then I decided that I'll be a corporate lawyer. And I liked corporate law. I read it as a paper. And I moved to one of the top law firms. And again, it was a grind. Those days, everything went to mostly your male partners were more, hardly any females around. And, you were putting it very, in a very crude way, कि पूरा रगड़ा लगाते थे वो at that time to you, So nobody told me what to do. Again, I realized I was, rubbing shoulders with students whom I nearly was at that age, their age, people I was teaching, a little while ago, and I was at par with them. Some of my age group people were ready to become partners. So it was somewhere in between I was, and it was very frustrating, to tell you the least, but I had to make the most of it. I had no other job. My salary was drastically reduced when I joined the legal world. So I've done these things many a times in my career, and if you see my CV, I've really taken these plunges many times, but eventually they worked out. And I joined them, determined to do very well. And they tried to push me aside, all kinds of things. When one day there was one gentleman whom I still think is my guru, and he is not a lawyer. He's a company secretary and a chartered accountant, but knows law much better than many lawyers I know of. And I became his pupil, and I told him, I said, you can hang me upside down, but you have to teach me law. You make me sit till 2 at night, I will. If I crib, throw me out. And I used to do that. I stayed in Gurgaon. My office was in Delhi, and I used to drive an old battered Maruti 800 of my parents. And there was no cell phones. So my parents would be pacing up and down thinking where she is. So life was very different those days, but mercifully it was not so unsafe also those days as it is now. And that's how I began my journey. And starting from 22,000 was my last salary I got as a professor. I started my career with 8,000. In 3 months became 11. And in 3 years' time, when I was with them, it became 50, which included a cell phone and some petrol charges. So getting a cell phone was a big thing. And I thought I was beginning to arrive in a law firm. And then General Electric happened. And am I still? Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
So General Electric came calling, and I joined them, and that was the beginning of many things. And it was a great company to work in. And I did 2 global roles with them, and then I did 3 general counsels roles for South Asia. One, just increasing the complexity of the work I was doing. The risk and the complexity was more. I was able to establish myself, because I think one of the most important things about that company was that there was a lot of room for people who were performers. That was one. The second was there was no issue on gender diversity at all. So you were a professional, whether you were man, woman, LGBT, anything, it didn't matter. So, and if you wanted to, like a person like me, got to do a lot of commercial stuff. I just wanted to do sales. So my boss just allowed me to be the general counsel and also do sales. So as long as you can make a go of it, the sky was the limit in that company. And they kind of they churned out the best managers in the world. And I became a manager very quickly. So I had an opportunity of almost a decade of learning good leadership from that company. And I have a lot to thank them for. Having done that, I realized that, of course, I hadn't much more left with them to do. I had done all the large businesses in India, and given the status of the company, we all know it sort of found its way down. They were not doing any overseas postings, so I thought it was time for me to move on. And when Maruti Suzuki happened, and I'm sure everybody would be thinking that, oh my God, from a typical Western MNC, which is General Electric, why Maruti? Maruti is homespun, typical Oriental company, Indian plus Japanese. You can't get more Oriental than that. But I had an option of taking on an APAC role with the other MNC, which is the world's largest healthcare company. But I chose Maruti because it would give me a challenge. Doing Medtronics, I could have done that in my sleep after doing, General Electric for so many years. But Maruti, this was a totally new culture. Of course, it was not the way how different it was. I only realized when I walked in, but I knew it would be very different. But of course, it's completely floored me, and it's taken me 3 years to just find myself into that milieu. And I thought I learned about a typical Indian company, which was a PSU at some point in time. Today is an MNC run by the Japanese. Between that, if I do this role, then I would have done everything around the globe. I've already done Europe and US, so now I do this and pretty much done. So that's how I came to take on this role. I am the only woman in the senior management team. So when they were interviewing me, I was quite perplexed. And I actually asked my now CEO, and I asked him, I said, why you shouldn't be taking me on? Because I feel that, he said, why? I said, because you don't have any women in your, management. And I'm kind of concerned as to how I will be dealt with, what would be my career progression. So he says, but no, we have a policy against non-discrimination policy. And I wanted to smile at his naivety, saying that doesn't matter really. It is when you work in an organization that those things begin to bother you. So I said, no, that will never be the issue, because I can never invoke the non-discrimination policy and come to you saying that I'm being discriminated against, because that will be held against me. I'll be the only one. The whole crowd would be giving evidence against it. So it will not work. But I said, I'm used to working with men. Your men have never seen a woman amongst themselves for all these years, 35 years. So how are they going to treat me like a professional? Well, to cut a long story short, he said, no, we want you on and all that. And 3 years now, 3+ years, in fact, I completed with them in January. And what can I say about Maruti? I think it's been the biggest learning of my professional career. It has taught me exactly what it means. What one of my first bosses in G told me was, don't worry about the work always will get done and you'll manage it. Worry about managing people. So I couldn't, those lines have come back to me in such a big way in the last 3 years, to see it's all about man management as you grow senior. And at any stage, I suppose it is about people. You got to manage the relationships right. You got to understand the place right. There will be everyone wanting to bring you down. You still got to swim upstream. How do you do that? What you do, what not? I'd leave those questions to be answered when we talk. But here I am 30 years later. I think in typical, if you benchmark it and if you say so, as many people tell me, oh, but you made it. I suppose in some ways I have. And I not only caught up with my peers who were 7 years ahead of me, but at a certain point in time, I thought I overtook them also. But there are some people who are still ahead, which is wonderful. I mean, I have no regrets. I think it's been a great profession, great learning. There has been a lot of empowerment, an occasion to give back. Today I'm talking to all of you. It's a way of giving back, and that's a great feeling. So with that, I will keep quiet and leave it open to questions.
Yeah, I think I use this term. We're going to hear an enriching journey, though it was an inspiring journey rather. How you've picked up and taken up challenges, and you've spoken about those plunges, but definitely they did work out. And it's a great lesson for our students that there's no looking behind, there's always a looking ahead, and you should rather go for challenges. I think, well, it answers our first question pretty well, which is why law and what motivated you. I think I could find out that the initial motivation was just a push from your family members or who wanted to. But then what is the real motivation to sustain yourself in this field?
Good question. And I thought about it when it was sent to me. And I said, why law? I think it brought about one, I think somewhere mentally I changed when I was studying in the UK. I just felt more free. I just felt that this has given me much more, a broader vision of the world. And with this, I can empower myself much more. And to a certain degree, I think it was also governed by the fact that I was just getting out of a bad marriage and I was going to be single. And I felt that, some degree of empowerment was very necessary for me to sustain myself. Perhaps those were some driving forces, unconscious driving forces behind this, but also the fact that to begin with, it was litigation. So I felt that, you can always support and help anyone when you are a litigating counsel. I mean, I'm doing that even in a corporate law. You help companies actually, but the fact is that it empowers you. It makes you much more well aware of your rights and obligations, I suppose.
Very true. As an executive director and general counsel of Maruti Suzuki, can you brief us about the array of work you handle at Maruti Suzuki India Limited currently?
Pretty much everything. See, we are a listed company. We are one of the top 20 companies in the country today. We're listed on the stock exchange. So my job as a general counsel, manning a team of plus 30 professionals, is to support the board, the CEO, and the senior management in any and everything that is related to, from strategic to operational, that's related to regulatory, legal, compliance, and also in a very dynamic, changing environment, both from a business standpoint as well as from a regulatory standpoint. In a nutshell, I do that, the whole spectrum.
Great. So though you said that the initial thing was very difficult for you to digest, that you're going to be one woman amongst all the senior men handling the positions there. So in a country like India, where do you see and how difficult was it? Or were there any major challenges that you felt being one of the single women handling that position?
Oh, yes, there are. And I would be lying if I said that they weren't. So the idea is that you have to accept that there will be challenges. The world has always been a very male-dominated world. Times are changing. There is a lot of change. And but to say that have we arrived? No, we haven't. So usually in larger, when you're more, sort of in a professional environment, any kind of a challenge is never overt. It will be very subtle. There's always a passiveness to it, which sometimes the biases can be extremely unconscious. And recently I was seeing a judgment of Justice Chandrachud, and I really felt that what a landmark thing he has done. This was about the 80, army women who were commissioned in the short commission, and they were looking for permanent commission. And there was a committee of standards that the army said that they don't meet those standards. And while giving the judgment, Justice Chandrachud and Justice Shah, I think two of them, it was a double bench one, said that, look, on the face of it, those standards look very neutral. But when you dig deep, they're full of biases. And they said that they have put in the doctrine of, indirect discrimination has been made a part of legal jurisprudence now, which means that it is not only direct discrimination. So direct discrimination, let me give you an example, will be one of, you have a policy of non-discrimination and you are expected to do XYZ under it and you don't do it, that's direct discrimination, okay? But if indirect discrimination is more about the consequences of a certain behavior, you're behaving like you are passing by and somebody just says, oh, we could make out that you're coming. I said, how? So, we heard your heels clicking on the corridor. Now, that could be a very unconscious way of getting to you, and which is a consequence of certain behavior. It is not about an overt discrimination. So I think it is more on that side. And when you are alone, it becomes a little difficult always to stand up to it. I had to gradually find my feet, and over a period of time, I think my first one happened when I was almost 3 months into it. And I just spoke very naturally and I said, yes, I don't agree with this. And then, of course, gradually, it also is also about, when you are in an environment like that, I have grown to understand my peers and everyone. They have never been around a woman professional. So you really can't blame them. Sometimes they don't even intend it and it looks like that. So somewhere you have to learn to, accept. Sometimes you have to forgive. Other times when it's rather blatant, you have to stop and say, hey, this is not right and it needs to be done a little differently. But I think over a period of time, we've reached a very reasonably healthy equation, I must say. and where earlier you are a unusual fly amongst their midst, and everyone's ready to swat you because you don't even look like them. So it's a sheer diversity is like staring you in the face, literally. And then gradually, of course, my entire whole attempt was that they should treat me more like a professional rather than as a woman. And that gradually happened when you started delivering, when you started giving them responses the way any other male colleague would, or etc. Then things began to change. And I think it's all about establishing your credibility at the end of the day. So
I think one piece of learning that is coming from you is with that little smile that you've carried, explaining us those incidents, which speaks that it was pretty much okay for you to handle all that. And that's the attitude I think all of us should carry. In continuation with the above question, what according to you is the best way to effectively map gender inclusivity and diverse gaps at workplace?
I think going back to and it's a great question, very close to my heart. All along in my years at General Electric abroad in India, I was always the gender diversity and inclusion leader, always. So I think I have a huge experience in all of this. General Electric was very different. It just created certain benchmarks, which I brought in to try and include in Maruti. Maruti is a typical old manufacturing outfit, which is only traditionally run by men. They gradually opened it to women, but extremely at mid to low levels where they really don't have a voice. They can't say much. When you have so many men around you, they would dominate naturally, So I just felt that we should have had a diversity council, diversity inclusive, which I think the HR agreed. When I came, they realized that she was a woman at the senior management. So all the younger women were all looking up and expected me to do something, about it. So we set that up. I attended a few sessions. There were basic stuff that, lighting was dim and the women didn't feel secure enough and stuff like that, in the evening shifts when women are working. So going from there, having better toilets, restrooms for women, and also trying to push them that, look, we need to have, every time there is a open vacancy in any vertical, make sure that you at least have a diverse slate. Now, everything being equal, the best person has to get it. But begin by at least having a diverse slate. Let there be some level of playing field, okay? But it is different. And this was one part, overt part. The other is sensitization. It is so important to sensitize men about the fact that women will bear children. Women will take maternity leave. That does not make them bad professionals. And if they do look after home and they look after office. So there is a lot of multitasking, and you need to be sensitive to it. You don't have to give them extra brownie points for it or whatever, but you need to be sensitive to certain environments that they work in. And you have to make the workplace a little more conducive to do that. Now, men tend to make things more conducive for them. See, it's a question of majority. Whoever is in majority will try and put things in place for themselves more because that's what they know. But if you sensitize them, and the best thing is to sensitize and train. This is what I learned in GE, that, you just can't go and wave a flag at them and say, listen, you're not doing the right thing and you now need to do this. Nobody will listen to you. You got to bring change is the most difficult thing to bring about. And it has to be slow. And in the Japanese, it has to be only incremental. Can't even be slow. It has to be increment. That's the way their culture is. So how can you suddenly bring about a total change shift? It won't happen, but gradually, bit by bit by bit, it will. And, and I think I looked upon myself. I said, there were times I wanted to just quit and leave. And then I told myself, no, I won't, not only for myself, but for the rest of the women. They lose heart if I do that. So I need to stand up and make something of myself in the organization. Then the women will feel that if she can do it, we can do it too. So you have to lead a little by being a role model. You have to have your policies and in practices in place. And then you have to create a sensitization. That is very, very important. So a combination of three will get you a little ahead on that.
Well, with this, we have another question, though I think a lot of us know the answer to this. You have been recognized as one of the top 500 powerful women in law in India, also being felicitated at the Indo-UK Law Society Summit at the House of Lords, London, and receiving awards like Outstanding Women in Law and General Counsel of the Year Female 2019-20. How does it feel?
Uh, on the one side, it's a kind of a vindication of where you started the journey. So some third parties recognize you, you realize that, well, you may have done something. But on the other hand comes a huge degree of responsibility. Huge degree of responsibility, because you feel humbled. You suddenly feel very responsible that if you are in that position, one, you can't go wrong. Two, it is your job to not only add to the fraternity that you're a part of, but also live up to it and make sure that a generation that is yet to come into it is far more empowered than you were. There is something which is very important to me. I feel that if you've achieved something, it is of no use if you can't give it away to others, or use it as a learning for someone else. And if it can be useful for them, I mean, I may be sounding like a terribly old parent, but like they say that they never want their children to go through the ups and downs. They want them, sometimes you've got to allow them. I think you got to, get your knees bruised a bit, and, you got to stand up and rub yourself and dust your pants and move on. But there are times when a certain amount of mentoring and coaching sometimes helps. It just gives you certain pointers and tickers. Nobody can hold your hand and take you through your career journey, really. But a great sense of responsibility and humbleness, Garima, to your question.
Great. What has been the biggest challenge in the legal operations of in-house legal departments amidst COVID-19? And what has been your strategy to cope with these situations?
See, COVID has has changed the world and will continue to change it. We are still in a very, very serious second wave, as we call it. It has taught people that you can work from anywhere. The technology and digitization are the biggest tools that will be the biggest tools of the 21st century, I suppose. In Maruti, when I joined, Maruti was again very old fashioned. They would only believe in physical meetings. There was nothing called conference calls or, video conferencing or anything of that kind, and for me, where I was used to telepresence, it was very difficult. I found I wasted my time just running from one office to the other. But when I tried suggesting to them that, you should look at conferencing and stuff like that, they just brushed me aside. Maruti, we know what we're doing, So I said, okay, great. I mean, I told myself I've joined the institution, so I have to conform. They will not do anything for me. But then pandemic did it. Within a week, everybody was scrambling for licenses of Cisco and WebEx and this and that and all of that. And within 2 weeks, after many faux pas of calling out for breakfast, not realizing you were not on mute and stuff like that. So all those little faux pas, which are really funny and interesting, but it was a journey. Marutians learned how to do video conferencing, and now they are savvy. They refuse to go back to physical meetings, which I think is wonderful for somebody like me. But I was very conscious of digitization much before, because I'd seen it differently. So even before the pandemic, I think we had started digitizing a lot of our database in the legal department. I wanted, because, lawyers tend to work very late at night anyways, even if you're a corporate lawyer. So a lot of things people, after going back from office, tend to open up and then do. So we wanted to make it a little easy that, even somebody is working, I would want to work at night. So sometimes, how do I get access? So we had already started putting, and most of it was in place. So when the pandemic happened, the switch for us was less than a week. I had all my team up running as if we were sitting in office within a week of the pandemic. And I have had it from others telling business stakeholders, saying that your team has supported us like there was no pandemic. And I had already put our code of business ethics into an e-form, which I'd been done physical trainings the year before for over 10,000 people. We are a large company. And then I said, this year we must put it into an e-form, and every year, alternate year, we'll do a physical training, but every year we must have a e-module, which everyone must do, So that we very merrily launched last year, which was wonderful. And we had 100% rate of achievement. And we hold a compliance month each year, which is dedicated, and we did it virtually. We are the first in the line, then there are other verticals who do it after us. So they merely just copied what we did, because we set the whole benchmark up, and it was a very satisfying exercise. So the challenge was that you need to be as functional as possible for your teams, for your business stakeholders, which we were able to do because of digitization on time. So you got to be ahead of the curve as far as if business continuity needs to be maintained. And all of our law firm partners, etc., I think also got onto speed very quickly. So other than meeting physically, which sometimes you miss, I think we've pretty much been on the game.
I think this change was not very slow, but adaptive in nature for everyone.
Yeah.
Ma'am, what is your take on the alternate dispute resolution mechanism and the potential of online dispute resolution, especially in the situation created by the pandemic?
See, even before the pandemic, I think there are talks now for the last couple of years, I would say, more than 2-3 years now, where even Niti Aayog has, really pushed for online dispute resolution. Some of the big Supreme Court judges, Justice Chandrachud is again one of those who's been advocating for this. There are a couple of reasons why this is important. One, because the load on the judiciary today is huge. And there are just so many pending cases. The backlog is very, very high. If there can be a level of mediation that can work, that's alternate dispute resolution, or even online mechanisms, given the fact that people are remotely placed, it saves you time, even if there was no pandemic. It saves you time and energy of running around. You can just be on conferences. You have to just advocate your case. We've recently done one in front of the CCI, which is Competition Commission of India. And I thought the hearing is just so much better because you can hear the judge so well. If you were standing in the Supreme Court, it doesn't work like that. There's too much of noise. You barely get to hear what's going on. It's messy. This is cost effective. This saves on time. It is only the cost is of technology. And most things, I think, can be resolved through an online mechanism. Online is nothing. Today, the judiciary, all the courts are hearing your cases online. So your dispute resolution can also be online. It's just that you have a different mechanism of functioning. The outcome is pretty much the same. If we have been able to do it, this is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. When we've already done, we are virtually holding all our courts, which are virtual today, and the hearings are virtual. There is no reason why online mechanism of dispute resolution cannot be adopted. So one is alternative, where you have mediation as a mechanism of solving easier and smaller cases. Things like intellectual property, etc., where there is a fallout, of that, even post the contractual obligation closing, or there you need your rights under law. So you can't have a small little mediator sitting and trying to, do that. But in most areas, if you have a house rent issue, you can actually resolve it at that place. You just have to put it down on a settlement decree, and that's it. Online dispute resolution, I think, will, given the pandemic pushing all of us in that direction, I think will take up a new form. I believe it is going to take up a new form going forward, and I think it will add to the huge load that we have on the judiciary, which will be I'm an advocate for it. But there will have big pitfalls and challenges, but those will have to be looked at, and some kind of a via media will have to be found for them. But yes, it's the step in the right direction.
True. How has the pandemic changed the nature of corporate law and corporate responsibility in India?
It has. corporate laws have also changed, like all of you've seen throughout the year, last year, I mean, they have, government has looked at whether it's the new labor codes, whether it has been the MSME Act, which has been, made more liberal, whether it is, your salaries to employees and, contract labor acts, threshold limits for getting licenses have been increased, everything. Now, corporate law has found its many changes. There has been a change in, for example, the Corporate Companies Act has also brought about certain changes, which actually has landed up decriminalizing many areas of law which were compoundable. Anything that is compoundable as an offense need not be criminal. You don't have to, and it makes it easier. So pandemic has pushed us more in that direction. The government is also, legislature has realized that, businesses, things have to be made easy for them to do business. And last year was one year where actually in practical reality, we realized how difficult sometimes it is to do business and what is the big need from the government side to ease out these issues, so that if the business takes place faster, the employees who are there or workers who are there, it's a win-win, and people are able to not get stuck into bureaucracy, but are able to move forward. When people do business better, there will be more generation of employment, and there will be, especially in the last year's migrant crisis, these were very, glaring questions that came out. So I think corporate law has seen a shift, certainly. Corporate social responsibility more so. Now, corporate social responsibility was something that the government touted in 2013 when they came out with the new Companies Act, which once 35 section and, with the Schedule 7, was something that they put together, hoping that the corporates will stand up to their responsibilities to society and learn to give. However, it didn't happen altogether like that. It was also became an area where people tended to put the money like this and bring it back from the other side. So some things which were meant for society and public at large began to be used as a mechanism of bringing it back and serving the needs of your business. And that was something where the government was noting and hoping that things would improve, but they didn't. So if you see in January, the new CSR rules that have come out, they have suddenly made things more stringent. They have put an onus on the on the board that you really have to look at it, that spend has to, they monitor the spend, where it will go, how it will go, what kind of projects you need to do, so the summing up of that is, that if you don't do it, then the government will do it for you. That's one. Second, about corporate social responsibility, I think the whole of last year, COVID, has woken us all up to see that do we really need so much to sustain ourselves? We really don't. We've all lived at home. We've not even used half the clothes that we have, and how much can you eat? So we've all ate home cooked food. So our healths are much better. You don't eat outside. We are watching movies on Netflix or others. You really don't need to go to the theater. You can survive in less. So the thought that, others, the calamity or the pandemic has created a calamity which is so intense and so large in its magnitude that people have perforce had to stand up and say that, look, they are my fellow beings. And the pandemic is a big leveler. There is no rich, no poor, no strata. It hits everybody equally. So anybody, like I have been through COVID, I can relate to even a poor man on the street who has COVID, understanding what his needs could be and what he may be going through and what could be the consequences of that. And therefore, that common thread that runs because of this pandemic has actually woken people to the need of giving, whether it is in your personal capacities or whether it is in the capacity of corporates. So I think from that perspective, the way of looking at corporate responsibility, I think the pandemic has brought a serious shift in that, coupled with, of course, the legislation to back it up.
Well, true. Very great lessons coming from there. Since we have limited time with us, last few questions. Ma'am, how would you describe your hiring and talent retention strategy? What kind of lawyers would you prefer in your team?
My hiring and retention strategy is that I do a quick understanding of what is the business requirement. Your lawyers have to fit. I'm an in-house counsel, so my lawyers have to fit the need of the business. So they must have some sort of a skill set that would match the requirements of the legal requirements in the organization. Once I get that ready, I put a scope down, and then I go about hiring the best. I believe in hiring people better than myself. There is no point being threatened in life. You are what you are, so if you hire a team that's better than you, half your job is done. And you can focus on things which are of greater importance than everyday work. Hire the best, and then give them a great scope. Be clear about what you want them to do. And then give them a clear line of sight. I feel, it's so important. What I would want from an organization, I would want my team to have it from me. Because if I don't give clarity, if I don't tell them that today I'm hiring you on this is what you expected to do. If you do X, Y, Z, this is where it's going to take you in 2 or 3 years' time. And then further, here's a line of progression. My basic understanding on this is that I want performers. And I want people with a can-do attitude, and an attitude of being humble and can do. If you're going to be cribbers, I don't think they have a place on my team at all, because the world is full of challenges. There's no fair play anywhere, but you have to be looking at that and then finding a way out of it, and don't sit there and say, oh, what do I do? You can't pose questions. You have to give your answers as well to those. So people with initiative, people with some sense of the gung-ho can-do attitude, you can be, it may not be a good day, but you've got to be able to stand up next day and, be able to solve the issue. So, and you've performed well. I mean, be there, up there to do it, and own your accountability should be strong. I think I've seen, and I've grown many people, and I'm very proud of certain members of my team who even now and previous teams who have really gone ahead and done so well in life. So that's a huge satisfaction, I think. So that's what I would want.
Yeah, to wrap this up, ma'am, what one piece of advice would you like to give to all our aspiring would-be lawyers, and what skills should our students need to have to join a team like yours?
Well, joining my team like mine, by the time they get out, I wonder if I'd be around there. But the fact is, whichever team they join, I'm sure there's all good teams. I think a couple of things. I think no substitute for, you should be passionate about the subject that you are working on, or the profession that you're in. If you're not passionate about it and, and just pulling along, you're never going to be successful beyond a point. So passion. Second is an immense amount of perseverance. Life is not easy. There will be challenges along the way all the time. Sometimes you'll be lucky, sometimes you'll not be lucky. And, when you're not lucky, I would advise you, do not fret. Fretting is not the answer. Like one of my bosses once told me, you're only allowed to mop for a day. The next day he said, Manjaree, I need to see your smile back. And the world doesn't end here. So you got to go on. So that is the attitude I would leave all of you with. Have that springboard mechanism in yourself. Don't give in to depression. There is, when one door shuts, believe me, the windows open and the sunlight and the air out of that is so much better than the door. So perseverance again, and take some risks along the way. You should have some good stories to tell your children and your grandchildren, right? You can't always be on the trodden path all the time, and the younger people are, you have so much, and you have only to yourself to cater to, not too many liabilities, etc. You can take those risks. Sometimes explore, sometimes see what your horizons are. Where can you stretch yourself? Maybe there is something hidden there which you didn't even know about yourself, and that comes to light. Don't be afraid to do difficult roles. The more risk you take, the better is the reward. And I tell you, when you do difficult roles, your learning is so much higher than it would be in a simple, easy, cushy role. Do not do that. Last, believe in yourself. There is no substitute for self-confidence. It should not be overconfidence. You have to be very careful. No overconfidence, no underconfidence, but the right amount of confidence is very important. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to tell yourself, keep updating yourself all the time. Be relevant. Sometimes we get waylaid, and be it men, women more so sometimes, when they are in that, they manage home responsibilities, they've got children, etc., etc. But there is no limit. I can show you n number of women with kids and everything and still done so exceedingly well. It's all in your mind. Learn to make the right trade-offs. Learn to, have a backup to a backup to a backup. And I'm talking more to the women here, so that your professional world doesn't fall apart. And God help, I mean, you're damned lucky if you have great family and great people around you who can support you in this. But even being totally gender agnostic, passion, perseverance, self-belief, ability to take some risks, appreciating and understanding yourself, and most importantly, managing of people around you. Do not, this is going to stand you in good stead throughout your life. It is all about people management. Alone, you can't do anything. Collaborate, be humble about your success, try and learn all the time. Don't think you got it all. And you have to keep learning. And life is about, it's a journey. And along the way, have lots of fun. Don't allow the fun element to go out of it. You only have one life to live.
Well, from the bottom of my heart, it was indeed a pleasure having you here with us. And I'm sure our students have learned so much from you today, especially the attitude that you've carried across, this positivity that you have tried to spill over with such challenges that you faced in life. I'm sure our students have got lots to learn. And I thank you on behalf of the management and the entire ALC fraternity for being here with us today, connecting with us and teaching our students such millions of lessons, which are, I would say, life lessons. And to acknowledge your presence, we have a small memento to present. Can we please have the memento for ma'am?
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much. I shall keep it very proudly. This is wonderful. Garima, thank you so much. And you've been a wonderful host and a great audience. I hope you have been able to, I've been of some sort of value add in this last 1 hour. And I wish you all great success in your careers and hope to see you around sometime, and good luck.
Same. We look forward to this continued association with you, and hopeful of this pandemic getting over and we can have physical interaction.
Look forward to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care.